of Book Talk Tuesdays. I'm Carissa Kellerby from Hardesty Regional Library, and June is National Pride Month. This time last year, I was volunteering at the library booth at my first ever Tulsa Pride Festival, and I had a really great time talking with people, and I'm sure, like many of you, you're very sad that it's been canceled this year. But at the library, we are still celebrating Pride with books by and about the LGBTQ community. So today, I'm highlighting some general LGBTQ fiction. Next week, I'll share some romance. And then the following week, I'm going to feature some amazing LGBTQ memoirs. So this week, first off, I have one of my favorite books, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This book is told in letters, written by the main character, Charlie, and we never really learn who he's writing these letters to. He just begins each one with, "Dear friend." So through his letters, Charlie shares intimate and candid stories of his life and going through high school, making friends, dealing with loss. His innocence and just genuine goodness will draw you in to listen, as he hopes you will, and as he describes in his first letter. And he reflects on the people around him and his feelings about them. Poignant and nostalgic with mixtapes and driving with no destination in mind, The Perks of Being a Wallflower will tug at your heart and make you want to revisit this book more than once. My next pick turned out to be a little bit more timely than I had originally thought when I first chose it for this post. It's called An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. And it's a science fiction novel, but the structure of the space vessel where the characters have lived their life is organized more like the antebellum South. So the structure of it's a generational ship. So the people living on it have lived there through many family cycles. And so the HSS Matilda has ferried the last of humanity to the mythical Promised Land. And on its way, the ship's leaders have imposed harsh moral restrictions and deep indignities on dark-skinned sharecroppers, like Aster, the main character. Embroiled in a grudge with a brutal overseer, Aster learns there may be a way to improve her lot if she's willing to sow the seeds of civil war. In this book, many of the characters are gender neutral, and the author is as well, preferring the pronouns they and them. An Unkindness of Ghosts is their first debut novel, and it leaves room for a sequel, which I'm very excited about. Next is kind of a sci-fi / kind of fantasy horror-ish kind of book. It's also young adult. It's called Afterworld by Scott Westerfeld. This one is very intricately plotted, and it's told in alternating chapters of 18-year-old Darcy, who lives in New York, and her teen novel is being published. Straight out of high school, she's publishing a book, and the other chapters are her book. So Scott Westerfeld does a really great job of weaving these two stories together. There's several parallels between Darcy, the main character, as she's trying to find a place to live that's not going to leave her penniless. She's trying to navigate the publishing world, which she's brand new to. And Lizzie, who is the main character of her book, and she slips into what she calls the afterworld to survive a terrorist attack and ends up becoming kind of a spirit guide. So she struggles with her new powers and the responsibility that has given her. And both of them also tackle the struggles of falling in love. Darcy falls in love with another female writer, and Lizzie finds a surprising connection to one ghost in particular. So this is a really, really interesting read. It's very unique and memorable, and I highly recommend it to adults and young adults alike. Next, I have, so this is kind of a rediscovered classic. It was written by E.M. Forster between 1913 and 1914, and it was right after Howard's End was published. But this book was not published until 1971. So the novel of Maurice is set in Edwardian Cambridge in the undergrad life and follows the main character from public school through Cambridge and into his father's law firm. Maurice is a conventional young man in almost every way except that he is homosexual. In many ways, Forster's novel was really ahead of its time, and he was very much ahead of his time and wanted to focus on the idea and the affirmation that love between men can be happy. And Forster said of his book, happiness is its keynote. In Maurice, I tried to create a character who was completely unlike myself, or what I supposed myself to be. Into this mix, I dropped an ingredient that puzzles him, wakes him up, torments him, and finally saves him. So it's a very beautiful story that's just as relevant today as it was when he wrote it, even though it didn't get published until decades later. Next, I have a historical fiction called Leading Men by Christopher Castellani. This one was inspired by the real-life relationship between Tennessee Williams and Frank Merlot. So this book is about a life-changing encounter between Tennessee Williams and his lover and a taciturn Swedish beauty at a 1953 Truman Capote party, and culminates in the deathbed revelations about Williams's final play a decade later. If that doesn't sound like drama, I don't know what does. So check this out. And lastly, I have a book by the divine Virginia Woolf. So I couldn't talk about LGBTQ fiction without including her lyrical and witty novel, Orlando. The story spans centuries through which Orlando passes through the court of Queen Elizabeth I to the 1920s and transitions from a young man to a woman. Orlando's journey from a wondrous young youth barbed by love to a feted writer and settled into her femininity is a wild and curiously relevant fable. And it has this beautiful new cover in the reprinting of it that just came out recently. So beautiful cover, beautiful book. All right, so that is all I have for you today. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week on Book Talk Tuesday. Bye.